Jesus, no eye in the sky. Moonshine Jesus, baby, don't lie. Moonshine Jesus, a surprising delight. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. I'm Caleb, and I'm here with my good buddy Mark. How you doing today, Mark?
Howdy, Caleb. I'm doing great. I'm excited about this.
I'm excited too because today we are talking about the new Disney Plus streaming series and the growing Star Wars universe, and it is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we've been waiting a while to see this, so this is fun. But before we get into that, I want to let you all know that today's podcast is brought to you by progressivechristianity.org, a wonderful resource for all your progressive Christian questions and needs. Hope that you will stop by progressivechristianity.org and check that out. Hope you'll also follow us on social media at the Moonshine Jesus Show if you are not already. So, Mark, Obi-Wan Kenobi, what a fun show, and I bet you have got a fun themed drink to go along with it.
I do. I will first say, if you are coming to listen to a podcast that doesn't have spoilers, just let me say this is not the podcast you're looking for. There will be spoilers. I give my Jedi mind trick.
I love it. Yeah. In case you're listening later,
you're looking at. So
yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what was going on there. So since I said this is not a spoiler free, the first two episodes, part of it is around basically a trap that is set for Kenobi. So I'm going with a themed drink that is based on the first time that iconic phrase was said. It's a trap, from Admiral Akbar. I'm having Admiral Akbar's Sazerac. It is 1 1/4 ounces of rye whiskey, half an ounce of absinthe, 3 splashes of Peychaud's bitters, a cube of sugar, some water, and if you won't garnish, but I'm gonna drink it without the garnish. So I'm going with the "It's a Trap" theme. How about you? I know that you're always trying to come up with something interesting here.
I'm always trying, and so I have got today. I've got Obi-Wan's lightsaber, and I had a handle on it, but it can.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it's a tall flute here, so it kind of looks like
nice.
a lightsaber if you can't see it. And I had a handle, like a stainless steel handle on the thing, and I was coming up to do the podcast, and it fell off. My whole drink fell apart. So I just got the tube.
That's like it's a beautiful lightsaber shade of blue. I love it.
It is, just
absolutely.
So to make this beautiful shade of blue, I had to use blue raspberry Kool-Aid and blue Curacao, all the blue stuff I could find, and vodka. So that's what I've got.
Not a bad way to go. Cheers, sir. Here's to a good show. Pretty nice.
How is it?
Pretty nice.
Good. Cheers to all of you out there. Catch you after.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to hit the drop and come back and geek out a little bit about this show.
Cool.
Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Thank you for being here with us on the Moonshine Jesus Show. This is our Geek Out segment. I do want to say next segment, we're going to be getting to some theological, political kind of perspectives on what's going on here. So hang with us through that while we geek out through this segment. So we're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, the new entry into the ever, as you said, growing lineup of Disney's Star Wars offerings. And if you remember at the end of Revenge of the Sith, the movie, in that film, Palpatine had issued Order 66, which is basically a Jedi genocide, order that has all of the clone troops and Sith killing every Jedi that they can find, including kids that are Force sensitive or the younglings, which we actually see in the opening scene. We'll talk some about that. And because of that, Obi-Wan Kenobi secretly ends up delivering 2 potentially Force-sensitive twin babies, Anakin and Padme's kids, Leia and Luke. And he delivers them to 2 separate families. He hides Leia with an important family on Alderaan, and he hides Luke with the family on the planet Tatooine, where he also stays kind of keeping watch over him. But in this show, at least so far, he gets called on a mission to rescue Leia, who's been kidnapped by the Galactic Empire's Jedi hunting Inquisitors. But it all ends up being a plot to get Kenobi to come out of hiding. So, and I love it. They did something I didn't know that you could do. There's this 4-minute recap at the beginning of it.
Yeah,
that actually made the prequel trilogy look pretty cool. I didn't know you could do that.
Who knew it was possible?
Didn't even had
no
no
idea.
No
one who saw him. No one who saw him knew it was possible.
But it was really engaging and well done. I was like, wow, whoever edited that intro, that recap, really needed to be the person they had working on the original. But anyway, I do want to say, though, there's this interesting thing that happens right after that is sort of a statement on the world we live in today. And there's this added last minute, basically added warning before you see the first scene, particularly understanding the events that have happened out in Texas and the mass shooting at the school. They say, this is the kind of a trigger warning for you that this opening scene could remind you of that and could be difficult. And I'm glad they did that, but it's a really sad statement of where we are. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that when we get to the political section of this. But I really loved where they went with this movie. There were so many great little moments for Star Wars fans. What was your initial feelings and response as you were watching?
I loved it, and I appreciated the recap, as you said. It had been probably a year or 2 since I'd gone back and watched all the Star Wars movies, and so it was. I've been keeping up with the Disney Plus shows, but it was kind of a fun. A fun way to remember all of those things that happened. But yeah, it was cool to see Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I think that fans had been wanting this for quite a while. And so one of the cool things that I think online streaming has allowed us to do is to delve deeper into this world that we only got to experience in chunks at a time in movies. And so I thought this was a lot of fun to really delve in a little bit deeper, especially as we looked at the Mandalorian and Boba Fett and all of this. But it's cool to have a central character like Obi-Wan Kenobi back and to see him struggle with whether he's going to use the Force or not was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think we need to talk a little more about that for sure. Although I did find it interesting, there was some really nice, I'm not going to call it Jedi mind tricks, but at least some sleight of hand in the way they produced all of this and advertised it to us, because we felt like we were going to be getting a show about Kenobi looking over Skywalker. And the reality is we've got Kenobi looking over Leia, with Leia being the key young person in it. But I also think that Reva, the Inquisitor, really had more screen time than he did, and so it feels like she's as major of a player in this as he was.
I think so too, and there's some interesting stuff going on there with her, and I think that'll be interesting to talk about in the next segment too, as we talk about like what her class and all of that and what all that means. And so she was very interesting. So the Inquisitors, are introduced to us as the Jedi, maybe former Jedis. Many of them are former Jedis who have come to the dark side of the Force, and she clearly has a connection with the Force because she's able to use that in the midst of trying to get Obi-Wan to come out, and that was fun.
We get teased a little early. Like the opening scene, the reason we get the warning is because it is the scene where Order 66 is crashing down on the Jedi Academy. And we're introduced very briefly to these 5 younglings who are studying. one of them, I think, was her. There
I
is
didn't know. I didn't catch
yeah.
that. Yeah.
There's a young black girl in it whose hair seems very similar, and the casting is such that it'd be easy to see her being the child version of Moses Ingram, who plays Reva. So I think there's some interesting things that we can geek out and explore on that a little bit. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's back up to what we said we we're going to be talking about a little bit about Obi-Wan Kenobi and what he's like on this planet.
Him. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the guy who the series is named after.
Oh yeah, is he the main character of this?
That's what they say. That's what they say. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
But let's spend a little bit of time talking about him because his situation's interesting, and I think that there's this two-sidedness to it that I'm going to be very interested to get your take on, because ultimately part of the question that I feel like this this show is exploring, at least so far, is the question of what happens if a mentor fails.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's kind of one of the things that's haunting him. Like Anakin was his understudy, and he was trying to help, and ultimately he lost him, and it's been haunting him. We actually see flashback scenes where it's haunting him and everything. So you got that he's haunted by his past, but you also have that he's supposed to be, because of Order 66 and because of protecting Luke, that he's supposed to be deep undercover and kind of in hiding. And what those two together end up, at least in my opinion, giving us is this almost barely recognizable Obi-Wan.
Withdrawn and and kind of in the shadows and unwilling to help in in a situation.
I think there's definitely this really interesting thing. There's some good writing. There's some really bad writing. There's a few bad pieces of bad writing and a couple of bad casting. One bad casting. Anyway, but there's some great writing that goes on as well. So you talk about him unwilling to do what he should do. We have Nari, who is another Jedi, but isn't as far adapted in his powers, who the Inquisitors kind of get called out. He ultimately tracks down Obi-Wan because he's on Tatooine too. And Nari, when he sees him, he asks Obi-Wan, and he was Ben at that point. I'm Ben. He even changed his accent to try to not sound like Obi-Wan. I'm Ben. But Nari says, "What happened to you?"
Yeah.
Which is really interesting, I think, because here's how my English major mind works. When the Grand Inquisitor first started hunting Nari, the Grand Inquisitor, who loves making these big speeches, says, the key to hunting a Jedi is patience. Jedi cannot help what they are. Their compassion leaves a trail. The Jedi code is like an itch. They cannot help it. But then he's saying that in the presence of Nari. Then Nari immediately within the storyline turns around and asks Ben, what happened to you? Because everything the Grand Inquisitor said does not seem to be true about Obi-Wan. That he is escaping that itch, or he's not responding. So my question to you, is he really that depressed and haunted by his past, or is he playing so well into his deep undercover hiding that he really does have that itch, and he's managing because of he realizes the stakes to get past all of that, and he's just playing like he's clearly depressed and he's clearly haunted. But is it that he's more playing into his role of deep undercover, or do you think it's more that he's really just that haunted and has become not really Jedi?
I think he's haunted, man. I'd love to believe he's like undercover, but I think this kind of is one of the things that happens. He's like letting his past mistake and failure scare him into inaction, and I think that happens a lot. I think we see that a lot. We see folks get caught up in something that's happened in the past, so much so that it scares them into inaction. At all, and in a way, even forces people to be different than they've been in the past. And so I think that's one of the things maybe that this is exploring, is like what happens whenever there is some kind of a tragedy, or whenever there is some kind of a trauma in our lives, and are we able to get past that? Are we able to be who we once were or not? And I think that's what's happening. He doesn't seem to even want to be a Jedi, even though he's kind of talking.
But at the same time,
you think he's got the inclination?
I don't know. I don't know that it has to be
okay.
either or. But at the same time, I'm just saying he is deep undercover, and if he practices being a Jedi, he's likely to call attention to him, and the Inquisitors are likely to track him down. I don't know the answer. I think there's this weird balance that I can't quite put my finger on. Is it more of his being haunted and depressed, or is it more that he really realizes that he has to go so deep undercover that he can't be who he was? Or is it both? Because I do think the writers having the Grand Inquisitor say that speech about it's an itch that they can't resist was meant to make us start being curious about the fact that Ben has resisted it in one way or another. Or, like you said, maybe it's a commentary on depression and how it can make us something that we're not really, or push us to places that deny who our true selves are.
Another interesting place, Mark, where that happens is whenever he's actually in the process of rescuing Leia, and she wants him to use the Force to demonstrate who he is, and he's like, no, it's going to bring too much attention to myself, right? And so it's not until he's forced to use the Force.
The Force. Well played, sir. Cheers to that. I'll take a drink on that one.
That he finally does it, and it's like he has a moment of which is I don't know what your favorite moment of the 2 episodes we've seen so far are, but that was my favorite moment. If I had been in the theater, I would have been like, clapping. Yeah, Obi-Wan, the Force. He's using the Force. But like a moment where he sees his former self, and like you're like, okay, this is the moment where he pivots to being more who he was.
Right.
So
I can see that, but I also think, like, for me, leading up to that scene, he has this a couple of fist fights, where he is clearly out of practice in fighting. Like he's not very Jedi like he even gets cut on the horns of one of the, and you can see him like grabbing at his hand. And for me, that's a guy who, he could have been haunted and everything, but he also was clearly not doing his Jedi training and keeping up. I mean, we see that throughout all these Jedi shows and movies. So the Jedis are constantly training, no matter how good they are. They're always training. He clearly stepped away from it, and for me, that part of that was the undercover. But you mentioned favorite moments. You know what my favorite moment was? I
want to know. Yeah,
I loved when it was they go to Corsica, and you realize that they're dressing this little girl, and you're like, It's Leia. We're getting Leia. Right. And then mom comes in to pick up Leia and puts her hood down, and it's not Leia.
You see the hand.
The hand that's not the color of Leia's hand, and then the hat goes back, and you realize it's not her. And she says, "What was it?" She says something like, "She says that you would find this funny, or that you would be entertained by this, or something." And then we quick cut to Leia running through the wood, or mom says, she's either in the cellar, the kitchen, or in the woods. And then we quick cut to the woods, and now she's out there running. For me, that was like perfect. I've heard some negative things. I love the casting of Leia here. Oh God, it was so Leia of this young actress when she and Ben are in the streets as they're trying to rescue, and he's like, okay, our cover story is we're farmers from this place, and you're my daughter. And under her breath she goes, granddaughter maybe. And he goes, what was that?
Right.
Goes, nothing.
Nothing.
I was like, she understands Leia. It was so beautiful. I absolutely loved that. But I do have a question.
Come out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have a question about all of that though. So if he is at least in part undercover, like or hiding, and then he's having to go rescue Leia, which he sort of had to be talked into.
Right.
2 questions. why hasn't he changed his look? And why the hell did he put on his Jedi robes to go find her?
See, Mark, I think you're saying that maybe it is kind of depression, and it is this
That's a good point.
previous experience, because he makes absolutely no effort to change himself. And so I was thinking that too as he's going into the city. I'm like, he's not very inconspicuous. he looks exactly the same. He's got his hood. Yeah, and he's got his hood up. I'm like, that guy looks like a Jedi. I mean, you can't see his lightsaber, but you can tell he's a Jedi.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a Jedi going there. Yeah.
I had two other, before we wrap this segment up, I had two other favorite moments. I imagine they're part of yours.
Yeah.
I did. I thought they did a lot of great work at reaching out to the fans, particularly of the original trilogy. And this was one of the scenes. Obi-Wan scrimping by, working as some kind of sushi butcher thing, barely has money. He has to steal meat to feed his pack animal.
Right.
Saves enough money to buy a toy for Luke, which I thought was just heartwarming. And the toy is the T-16 Skyhopper that we see Luke playing with in A New Hope. My heart melted. Just was like, oh my God, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Uncle Owen returns that. He doesn't let Luke get it. And this was a not heartwarming, but one of those moments that just got me was when Ben tries to say he should have this, and because I'm going to end up needing to train him. And Owen says, like, he trained his father, which was just like dagger to the chest.
Dagger. It was painful.
It really was. It really was. And sad. But I think it points to how well thought out this is. I mean, it was originally going to be a movie that ended up getting changed into this short 6 series. But I'm just loving it so far.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's good. I agree. Good. I think primarily good casting and good writing too. I'm with you, Mark. Absolutely. I think it's good.
Absolutely. I tell you what, we could keep going on and on, geeking out more and more. But as much as it might entertain us, I don't know how much it would entertain everybody else. So let's hit a drop real quick and come back to our next segment.
Let's do it.
Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. Today we are talking about the new Star Wars series on Disney Plus, Obi-Wan Kenobi, where we get to follow Obi-Wan Kenobi and others as they are in this ever-expanding Star Wars universe. And one of the things that I love about Star Wars in all of its forms is its commentary on life through politics, and it's a series that is pretty theological too. I mean, I don't think you can talk about the light side and the dark side of the Force without being a little bit theological.
Or a savior who was born to a mother who had
there's some theological stuff going on.
There might have intentionally been some in Star Wars.
They may have planned that.
You sold me. I'm in with you.
Okay, you think maybe there's some stuff here, and I think there's a lot to unpack. Even if we focus primarily on the 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, that we see a lot of theopolitical stuff going on here. And so one of my favorite lines in the show, I think that also exemplifies what we were just talking about before the break, and that's the actress who plays Leia is kind of understanding who she is, and that they're doing a good job of developing her. Is that she's talking with her dad, and she says, "I don't want to be a senator," and he says, "That's probably why you'll be one of the best."
Brilliant line.
A great line, right? And so,
and also, what great parenting. I mean,
And what
honestly.
great parenting! What great
Mm,
parenting!
yeah.
So maybe if some of our senators had some of that upbringing, maybe like don't do whatever is necessary to hold on to power. We don't have any people in leadership right now who are doing that, do we? Who are just like
Uh,
saying whatever they need to do
let me think. Let me
in,
think.
in
Yeah, I'll have to
fact,
get back to.
we haven't seen any of that like in Texas over the past week or so
Hmm.
through any leadership, have we, Mark?
Yeah, well, maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little. Okay,
And
so
and I'm
yeah,
laughing, but it's no laughing
yeah,
matter
it's
ultimately
not. Yeah,
because the things that happened this past week in
yeah.
Texas has
Hmm.
a lot to do with the false bravado of the leadership that they're trying to
Hmm.
do what's best for a nation when really all they're trying to do is what's best for their pockets and the pockets of of the
Of the
GOP ultimately.
and the gun lobby, you know, and the
Oh,
NRA.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so I was having this conversation this morning that it seems like there are folks who are perfectly content with doing whatever, saying whatever they have to say
Mm,
just to appease the NRA. So, like one, I
absolutely.
think the lieutenant governor in Texas had said that God is using tragedies like this to bring communities together. And my wife said, she's like, how can anyone believe that? I'm like, I don't think they really believe that. I think they're just saying whatever they can say to line their pockets further and to stay in power.
Oh, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
online, a comment that just popped up from Linda Parker said, you know,
Yeah.
they go as far as saying things like doors, not guns, are the fault. And it depends on which one you talk to, whether it's the locked doors that's the problem or the unlocked doors. And it's like you said,
And,
it is like we'll say anything, even
yeah.
what I would call using God's name in vain, like
Hmm.
putting words into God
Yeah.
and expectations and actions
Hmm.
of God that would not fit the biblical understanding
Right.
as far as what Jesus taught us of God. Trying to use that for self gain is
Hmm.
definitely using God's name in vain, and it is
Absolutely.
horrible, inexcusable moral behavior to say the sacrifice of those 19 kids is
Hmm.
fine because it's going to pull our community together. What the hell?
Abhorrent. Yeah, you're right. If you want to, yeah, if you want to talk about using God's name in vain, you're absolutely right. That just using religion to justify politically abhorrent, morally abhorrent stances is definitely using God's name in vain. And so I think that that it's interesting that both of the new shows that were released this week, this one and Stranger Things,
Stranger
which I
Things,
think,
yeah.
yeah, that both had to have content warnings because of the way that they had portrayed
Mhm,
children,
mhm,
kind of getting massacred at the
yeah.
beginning, and the fact that that is a part of our pop culture and also so up is I think reflective of the part that it has become so much a part of our society. And I don't know how you felt, Mark, but I when I found out the news last week about these students, I wasn't like shocked at all. I
Yeah.
wish I was shocked, but I wasn't because since Columbine we counted and
I know. I
it's been
counted as well.
169
Mm-mm. More than that.
students. Tell
If you
me.
students, I'm just talking about
Yeah,
incidents. There's been
yeah,
379
yeah,
or 71 or 72, something like that.
yeah,
More than 307 since
yeah,
Columbine. There's been
yeah,
370 school shootings that have happened, and
yeah.
we've done nothing. We've
Nothing.
done nothing,
Yeah, so
and
and I
and
think
we know some of the
169
things.
students. Yeah, and nothing. Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've
Yeah.
done nothing about it. And we know some of the
Yeah.
things that work. I mean, we know
Yeah.
what 1994, Bill Clinton puts a ban on
Mhm.
assault weapons. We
Assault.
immediately
Yeah.
see like a
Mhm.
49% or 47% drop in in school shootings and deaths that way.
Yep.
In 2002, the GOP, I'm suspecting the ones whose pockets are lined by the NRA, allow that
Oh.
ban to
It's the
go away.
GOP.
Well, maybe. But they allow that ban to go away rather than re-upping it. And
Yeah.
we have like an increase of, I think, 279% of deaths from assault rifles. So we know some of the things that can be done that will make this better.
Right. Yeah.
Just not
It's
really.
It's just doing them, right? And so I think both parties are guilty of this, because even last week, as we hear talk about, oh well, we've got to stand up to the gun lobby. Well, that's nice to say, but we've been saying that for 20 some odd years, and especially for the last decade after Sandy Hook. Like, well, let's stand up to the gun
Yep.
lobby. Okay, well, it's one thing to say it; it's one thing to actually do it, and and to work on legislation that's actually like an assault rifle ban, or a waiting period, or background checks, things that most people can agree upon, no matter where you
Well,
stand
and
politically.
most Americans want it. Like it.
That most Americans want it. You're right. Yeah, you're right. You can agree
We
upon
know
it.
that
You want it. It's just the courage to do it.
Yeah, it's just the political willpower to do the right
Mhm.
thing rather than to do what's going to protect their ability to get elected, or their ability to raise enough funds to get elected.
Yeah,
It's actually heartbreaking that we have arrived at this
it is
point,
heartbreaking.
that the will of the people actually is
Mhm.
demanding, ultimately, as much as a will of the people can demand, that we make sensible changes to gun
Mhm.
laws,
Mhm.
the ones that we know work, that we've seen work in America, and
Right.
we've seen work in other places as well. But we just don't do it. And
Yeah.
we as a society don't stand up for our voices. We don't
Mhm.
make sure that we're heard, and we don't make the demands that are going to have to be made, because if the gun lobby is going to provide them money, and if
Yeah.
saying what they want to say gets them reelected, they will keep doing it over and over again until our voices are louder than those voices and put at risk their ability to be reelected.
Yeah, and I think this has to do a lot with, are we willing to really hold like our legislators accountable, or if they don't do anything, are we going to vote them the hell out of office? Or are we going to sign petitions? So I think this is also kind of a commentary on empire, and I think that's one of
Yeah.
the things that I think is really interesting about Star Wars, is that
Mm.
they literally use the phrase "the Empire."
The
And
empire. Yeah.
I don't think we can get out of this segment without saying too that is the thing that Jesus was standing up to, right? Was
Right.
empire, the
Right.
Roman Empire. He's crucified by the Roman Empire. And so I
Yeah.
don't think we can escape the themes of the light side of the force, the dark side of the force, and empire
Mhm.
without getting out of the segment. So,
No, I
what are your
completely
thoughts on it,
agree.
Mark?
No, I completely agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's not surprising the number of themes in Star Wars that have not just Christian but spiritual overtones, because
Mhm.
being born into a virgin is not just a Christian thing. There are other religions that believe that,
Right.
but it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
clear that those themes were picked for a lot of purposes, including being able to set us up for making commentary on empire, which also many religions speak out against the abuse of power, particularly
Mhm.
politically, but also spiritually. Those who use their spiritual places of position to
Mhm.
um, control other folks and to abuse other
Yeah.
folks. So, I mean, this is not something that you and I are reading into it. This was built into this story for
Absolutely, it
sure,
was. Yeah.
100%. And it's part of what makes Star Wars so beautiful. It's just this wonderful commentary on the difficulties of life and the
Mhm.
challenges of those who become obsessed with power, which, let's face it, the gun lobby and those who
Mhm.
bow down to them essentially are obsessed with power. And as long as doing it
100%.
allows them to keep it, they're just going to.
And they built their own empire,
Yeah.
the gun empire, and they've manipulated people into thinking that it's what's best for them, even though it benefits them primarily. So I think we also see themes of empire in this series so far already, in exploitation of workers in terms of social class and
Mhm.
station, and I think in a lot of ways we see a commentary on why empire is evil. And so I
Yeah.
think there's
Oh,
a lot
definitely.
to unpack, but Mark, to do it, we're gonna have to do another podcast episode on Star Wars, because there
I
is
it
so
might
much.
it might be fun to come back after Kenobi wraps up and do a
Mhm.
wrap up after the
Oh, that
full
would be fun.
series is wrapped, to go back and explore some of the questions we had in this episode and see where they go with them.
Yeah, I love it. So, so we're gonna have to do that later on, as you suggested, Mark, because we're going on, and we've still got another segment, and we've got to try to make each other look stupid, Mark. And so it's our make our co-host look stupid segment. Make me look stupid segment. So I hope you will stay tuned after the drop and see if we can do it.
I'm gonna stump you.
Let's see.
All right. Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. And thank you for sticking with us to this final segment. This segment is called Make Me Look Stupid. And
all right.
So the idea here is to see if we can stump our co-host. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes we have good questions, sometimes we don't. I've got 3 different questions, so I'm going to start. That's the. I'm not going to ask. I'm going to let you pick.
Ask them all 3 right in a row. Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to let you pick. I'm going to let you pick. Like, ask the host.
You're going to ask me 3, and I'm going to no.
You're going to pick 1, 2, or 3, and I'm going to ask you the question that comes with it. These are not.
Wow.
I don't always work really hard to make you look stupid. I mean, I enjoy working really hard to make you look stupid, but I don't always do it. These are possibly answerable questions. So 1, 2, or 3, Caleb?
3.
Okay, that was actually the number I was hoping you were going to pick. All right, here it is.
Okay.
All right. So how does Reva know who Vader is? Because she reveals that she knows, and up to this point, very, almost no one outside of about 4 people know who Vader is. And going forward in the canon, it remains that way. No one really knows that Anakin became Vader. It does increase the number of people, but very few. So how is it that at particularly this early crucial point, Reva knows who Vader is?
Yeah, so
I'm just going to lean back and have a drink while you try to get your way through this.
Well, I stumble my way through this, especially since I was sitting there kind of wondering the same thing as then it's got this, flash to Vader, and I wondered myself, and so I don't know. So she comes from this lower social location, and she's trying to make her way up through the Inquisitors, and she clearly has Jedi training. I liked your thought, Mark, that maybe she was one of the early Jedi that were in there. I wondered if maybe he somehow took her on as an apprentice as he's turning into Lord Vader, and he's trained her somehow, and so she's got a connection that we're going to find out about throughout the series. And I think maybe she's an apprentice of Lord Vader. Do you have an answer?
I think that is a pretty good answer, and it certainly could be one that she sort of worships Vader, and Vader now hates Kenobi, so it makes sense that he passes that on to his Padawan and that kind of thing. Ellen Green says it's an easier answer than that. Ultimately, she knows because she's a woman.
Yeah.
She just knows.
She just knows. She's got intuition. She knows.
That's pretty fair.
Yeah.
I can't remember who. There was an admiral who also kind of figured it out through intuition and just noticing things, who also figured it out. So it certainly could be that. I like your answer quite a bit. I was playing with the idea of, if she is one of those kids that we see at the Jedi Academy, that something happens, because there's this great one-shot tracking thing that brings us through this, but we ultimately leave those kids with no defense and cut away from what happened. I'm wondering if we're not going to come back to that. And see what really happens, and that maybe a couple of things, this playing with your timeline or your idea, maybe Anakin is there and spares her life, that she's the one that he spares because he senses something, or there's something that happens that makes it sound like that Obi-Wan was supposed to be there to help them, and he wasn't. And so she has this anger about it. Because I've also got to say, she, outside of Leia, she comes off as the wisest character so far. And she doesn't. There's this great cameo by Kamal Nanjiani that's in this show, and she ultimately should have killed him, but she doesn't.
Right.
I wonder if she's going to turn before the show's over. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see. I like that.
I like your answer. I also like Ellen's answer. I don't know that particularly since she is force sensitive, and we do see Leia early on having this sort of intuition from being force sensitive, where she really she has that really jerk of a cousin who's like, well, you're not really an Organa, and she goes, oh well, you're jealous, you're scared of your father, and just starts laying into him with some knowledge that she shouldn't have, that I couldn't help, and I think most of us couldn't help, though, how much force sensitivity is going on here. And so I could see her sharing this sort of force sensitivity with Reva, and that would be a nice little parallel as well. So, a matter of fact, it'd be really cool if they both have it, and Reva ends up ultimately somehow saving Leia instead of using her as trap. I don't know.
I think that's one of the coolest things about Star Wars too, is we get such strong female leads, and I mean, it's always been. I mean, early on, in the 70s, to see this was pretty cool.
From Leia's first line of, "Aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper?"
Yep. So strong, and even through the modern sequel trilogy, to see the strong women characters, I think is pretty cool. Okay, absolutely. So here's what I want to ask you, Mark.
I'm worried.
Okay, so the prequels weren't received super well.
You don't say.
From most
Me say Jar Jar Binks. Why?
From Jar Jar Binks.
Why wouldn't people love that?
And I mean, the love, wasn't this in the second one? Wasn't that such fine acting between Padme and Anakin? Yeah.
Oh, they both struggled so hard.
I think they struggled.
For her, it was because of the writing. For him, it was just that he couldn't ever find.
He just couldn't act. Yeah.
He could. Well, it was okay. He just couldn't find that character. That character was beyond him. I'm not sure that anyone could have found that character. Frankly, I mean, come on.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. And,
but you're right. I went down another geeky rabbit hole. You're right. They were not well received, and there was pretty good reason. Not
well received. Okay, but we've got in this one, which is a little bit different than the the Star Wars universe we've seen so far that's streaming. We've got a character from the prequels, and in many ways carrying on the storyline of the prequels. Do you think that Obi-Wan Kenobi can redeem the prequels? Is there any possible way this series can redeem what happened in the prequels?
Ultimately, there is no way, because, and I'm going to quote Ellen Green, who's watching online live right now, who says, Jar Jar is an abomination. And you're right, Ellen. You're right. Like no, I mean,
you can't make up for Jar Jar.
They can redeem part of it for sure. But there were so many missteps and miscues in that storytelling of those first three. There was some, like I said, I don't think that Anakin, that was almost an impossible role. So I love that Hayden Christensen is playing Darth Vader again. So he's reprising that role.
Yeah.
He has a chance to maybe redeem that. It does seem like there's some better writing going on here. So maybe they'll be able to do that. So we might be able to redeem certain characters. Like I'm pretty hopeful about Anakin and Hayden's acting because he's not a bad actor. It's just in that role was I don't know someone.
We'll see. We'll see.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
All he's had to do so far is stare at the camera and look menacing.
While we're doing our review at the end of the series,
scene. Yeah.
I might have to eat my words once we do the review at the end of the series, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. He couldn't.
But that's anyway, when we'll see who wins this segment.
But ultimately.
Okay.
Jar Jar was such an abomination on the prequel trilogy. I don't know that that's ever redeemable. That we've had him show up once or twice in some of the animated series and stuff, and it's never been a good thing.
It's never worked out. No,
it's always been.
He's always an abomination. Yeah,
yeah. So no, I don't think you can fully redeem it, but I don't know that is full redemption ever completely possible. Maybe we're looking at some partial redemption to this story.
Well, you know what? I'll take any redemption we can get on those prequels. If there's any way to salvage any part of those,
I completely agree.
Go for it.
So, I'll take what I can get when it comes to redeeming those for sure.
That's right. I'm hopeful too, and you're right. Well, it seems like it's a little better.
I think this is a great idea. We're going to come back after the series is wrapped. We will come back. We will revisit this. We'll look at our questions. I've got a couple of questions that I'm waiting to see. Is the Grand Inquisitor really dead? What really is Reva's deal with Obi-Wan? Why? What is it?
Yeah, why is she obsessed?
Why is she so obsessed? I don't know. So it's going to be interesting. And was she the kid at the Jedi Academy? There's a lot of questions that we can come back to and look at. But ultimately, it's fun to live in the questions. And it's great to be here doing that with you, Caleb, and all of those who are sticking with us and listening to the show. You have made it through 46 minutes of us.
Congratulations
about a wonderful show, and it has so much potential. Thank you for being here with us. And until the next Moonshine Jesus show, cheers. And we hope to see you again next week.